There's an easy fix here, and it's not the courts, because the courts take a long time, a long time. The fix here isn't legislative change, because they don't have the power to do that. But if they went against their own decorum and actually vocalized their concerns about the legitimacy of his authority under the disqualification clause, it positions a reality in which the narrative of memory is changed. It means that courts will be forced to choose the side of the king or the side of the constitution. But right now, that, the Democrats' position that they didn't want to touch the provision because they wanted a peaceful transfer of power, which is crazy because if we democratically elected a monarchy, would they allow for that? They positioned that they would because that's what the people chose. But the people cannot choose anything that is contrary to the constitution, because nothing is above the constitution, including the people, including democracy, because above democracy is the constitutional supremacy. Article 6 Supremacy Clause doesn't mean only that the federal government is above the state authority, that's under a constitutional valid contract. But right now, he's just, trampling on the Constitution. So is it valid? Who knows? But it does mean, no doubt, that nothing can be superior to the Constitution. Anything times zero is zero. Anything against the Constitution should be the Constitution. Unfortunately, our judiciary history does not prove that. And that tells us what? That the Constitution is not sufficient because it is purposely, left vague in order to be hijacked and promoted in order to overturn it, right? That's what the Republicans kept. That's what they kept. They kept sabotaging the constitutional processes in order to take away from the power that it would have eventually. So now the courts have room for interpretation to say technically he does have this power, even though no other president before has used it. He does have this power. Or to say that, hey, since Trump versus Anderson happened and there's no, congressional majority that is liberal, then that means that there's no capability of revisiting Amendment 14 Section 3. But in fact, Amendment 14 Section 3 positions that he shouldn't even be there. He shouldn't even be there, yet he is. And that is because of legitimacy that was given bipartisanly by the Democrats as well, but not even questioning, the election when it comes to the legitimacy. Why? Because they thought they would achieve, a true transfer of power contrary to the ones that they gave in January 6th. They wanted to be, the bigger man. The bigger man got us what? It got us what? A demagogue. And the only reason they don't do this, the only reason they aren't avidly, questioning the legitimacy of someone being president who is disqualified from the Constitution, because the Constitution is to be above anything, including the courts, including the judiciary. If the Constitution says that we have voting rights, the courts cannot say, no, we don't, because I feel like it. It's ridiculous. And that's the thing, a failure of law school, because you learn that American justice is obedience to superior orders, and unless you knew that superior order should be the Constitution, as the attorneys, in order to get their license, they take an oath to support the Constitution, it should be the Constitution, but what they deem is the president. The law firms think that's the president, the universities think that's the president, all other organizations think that's the president, but it's actually the Constitution. But, the court should be interpreting the Constitution. It's not up to the law firm, so they have room for plausible deniability, right? And that's the thing. All of these shortcomings feed into each other to promote a constitutional coup. But that can only be broken by the Democrats finally saying, hey, there is a problem of legitimacy here, and we are not going to engage in this government unless it is taken up by the court in order to uphold a constitutional order, because through legislation, we're not going to achieve it. It's going to be through courts, but they're not willingly going to want to do it. It has to be Democrats positioning that there is a severe breach of the Constitution, therefore promoting a dissolution of it, which would, disconnect the states from the federal government. Now, reality, it means we no longer have a union. That is worst case scenario, but that will only be possible if the courts actually fail to uphold the Constitution. But that can only be put to the forefront, not from the people, but from Democrats. Democrats who refuse to provide the legitimacy. The legitimacy is what gives them authority. It's why law firms like Skadden Arps is bending a knee before there's even an executive order against them. But this is the short version of the next one, which is 5 minutes, so I guess it's not that short.